Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Occult Think Tank. My name is Greg. In today's program, I am going to be talking about the subject of parallel worlds. And to begin this one, I came across a story that is truly unbelievable. And I can honestly say I wouldn't believe it if there wouldn't be evidence from it. But to begin this, here is that story. I will comment on it after. The following is an actual account of my experiences as of recently. Because of the nature of what happened, I must remain anonymous until I feel it is safe to reveal my real name. But for now, you can refer to me as James Richards. On September 9th, 2009, I experienced something that I am still having trouble believing happened to me. I came into possession of a cassette tape containing a Beatles album that was never released. In fact, not only was it never released, but it was recorded many years after they broke up. And no, I'm not talking about Clay 2. Now this is where the story becomes slightly more unbelievable, and it is almost embarrassing to attempt to explain the incident to you for fear of viewing me as completely absurd. I must assure you, I am not insane or on drugs, and hopefully the audio tape of this will be enough proof that there is more than we think out there. I live in Livermore, California, but on September 9th, I was driving home from Turlock after visiting a friend for a few days. I had my dog with me. I didn't have any plans for that day, so I decided to take a drive through a place called Del Porta Canyon, just west of Turlock. There is a scenic road that is a fun drive and actually goes through to Livermore. I hadn't taken a cruise through it for a while, so I thought I would take this way home. It was about 2 p.m. A ways into the canyon, my dog started acting like she needed to use the restroom. So I pulled over to the first available parking area to the side of the road and let her out while I stretched. At first I didn't notice, but then I heard the barking from 30 yards away. My dog was chasing a rabbit. Now my dog is a pretty good dog, but when she is chasing something, then there's no stopping her. So the only thing I could do was become part of the chase. They already had about 40 yards head start, so I really had to book it. The uneven ground and soft dirt patches made it difficult to run, and it wasn't very far into the chase I had stepped into a rabbit hole, fell, and knocked myself unconscious. When I woke up, I was in a room with some furniture and electronics in it. I was taken care of with a bandage on my head, but I still felt uneasy about the situation, because where I fell and hit my head was in a very rural, unpopulated area with no houses. And outside the window of the room I was in, I could hear traffic. I wasn't near the window in the room. It was actually on the other side, next to an unusual-looking electronic machine that I didn't recognize from anywhere I've seen before. The only reason this stood out was because it seemed to be out of place in the person's home, in which most of the room resembled. I decided to get up and look out the window, but the door opened and in ran my dog, who was pretty excited to see me. When I looked up, there was a man standing in the door. He was about 6 foot tall, had medium long black hair, and was dressed casually nice, but gave me a greasy vibe, if you know what I mean. He introduced himself as Jonas and asked me if I was okay. which I said yes. He said he found me unconscious in a field with my dog barking at me. So I thanked him for helping me and my dog out, and that I was surprised my dog even came back to me. Then I asked him the question that would make me start wondering if in fact I had gone crazy. I asked him, "Where am I?" "About 20 feet away from where I found you," he replied. I told him that couldn't be possible because there were no houses within at least 20 miles from where I last remembered being. He then told me that he was going to say next would be very shocking and unbelievable, and that if he didn't actually experience it himself, then he wouldn't believe it. He took a look at the machine near the window and looked back at me and said he transported me to a parallel Earth. He said he traveled to our Earth dimension and found me knocked out in the blazing heat with nobody around to help me out. Normally, he said he doesn't take outsiders through the portal, but in my case, he thought I needed urgent help. I immediately started asking questions about traveling to parallel worlds, since all I knew about the topic was YouTube videos of Mikao Kaku. He told me to slow down and that he would explain himself. Apparently, in his world, a parallel travel machine can be purchased quite easily. While not cheap, it's pretty popular, even though the machine can be dangerous enough to cause death. In the 1950s of his dimension, the government was faced with a decision to continue to fund a space program, I'm guessing NASA, or a parallel dimension program called ARP-D. I can't remember what he said it stood for. I'm pretty sure the P-D is parallel dimensions. And I remember the acronym because I noticed it on a lot of the electronics in the room I was in. He then explained the real danger of using one of the machines was exploring new dimensions. Since there are an infinite amount of Earths in other dimensions, only a small amount have been explored. The problem with exploring unknown dimensions is the chance you will die somehow once you walk through the portal doorway. He told me that people have died from falling if the ground isn't close enough to where the portal opens, die from drowning. There are worlds covered in water, hard to reopen a portal underwater, die from fire, atmospheric issues. He said in order for people to avoid this, they would have to know that where they would be, similar ground in the dimension they were traveling to. So his government began to research worlds that were safe to transport to, even creating public spots where people could choose a menu of worlds to go to that were all safe. Many of these worlds were lush vegetation worlds that were never ruined by man, only to be invaded by large, crowded overpopulation of travelers' world. He said something about new industries that opened up because of this. One of them being something like dimensional life brokers. These people offered a chance to live as someone new in an already established similar world that doesn't know of dimensional travel, nor that there are people crossing the dimensional portal too. Jonas said he was an explorer for one of the dimensional travel agencies and was looking for new uncharted dimensions and came upon my Earth. We talked about a lot of things. It was interesting to see what similarities and differences we had between worlds. Food, culture, TV, technology. We covered a lot. We also started talking about music, which was an interesting topic because there were many of the same bands between our worlds that existed, including the Beatles. When their name came up, Jonas mentioned that his brother just got back from seeing them perform at a concert recently, which I gave him a weird look and said, "You mean they're still together?" He said, "Yeah." I then told him how they broke up in our world and that John and George passed away. Apparently, in his world, they are all still alive, healthy, and on tour still. Jonas then had me follow him into another room that had a bookshelf-looking thing with some cassette tapes. Yes, music ones. Apparently CDs never caught on in his world. A tape player, radio, record player, though it didn't quite look like the type of radios we have. The speakers looked more like crinkled cardboard, but sounded pretty good. I didn't get a good look of the speakers, but they certainly weren't round. They almost looked like a tall accordion. The only Beatles album he had that was store-bought had a real cover art of Sgt. Pepper's, which the cover looked slightly different than the ones we have, but the songs were all the same. The other 6 Beatle tapes he had were all like somebody recorded them onto a blank cassette for him and wrote the song titles on a card and slipped it in the case. A couple of the album titles on the tapes I recognized, but there were about 4 that I never heard before. He played a few songs of one of them, which was totally surreal to hear the Beatles music that was never made, at least in our world. We talked about it a little bit. He said a girl made the tapes for him while he was in upper school, what they call high school. She was a huge fan of them and wanted him to listen to them. He popped out the first tape and was putting in the second when I told him he should record me a copy of one so I could take it back with me, thinking it wouldn't be a big deal. Well, the look Jonas gave me when I said that is part of the reason why I'm remaining anonymous. Not only did it sort of scare me, but it looked very serious, almost creepy look to it, followed by the phrase, not word for word, I can't remember exactly what he said, "No, you're not to take anything back to your world. No pictures, souvenirs, tapes, nothing." I asked him why, and he wouldn't really say, except that for my safety I wasn't to take anything back. Of course, I'm not the type of person to go through all this parallel world stuff and not grab something to prove the outrageous story of my experience. So for the moment, I told him I wouldn't take anything and changed the subject. About an hour later, after some more talking, I heard a doorbell ring. He left the room to check the door. I knew that I may not get another chance to take something, so I grabbed one of the tapes and put it in my pocket, then shuffled the tapes around to make it look less obvious that something was missing. When he came back inside, I said I was kind of hungry. To just get us out of the room, I mixed up the tapes so it was hard to tell that one was missing, but I didn't want to be there when he found out. So he took me into the other room and fed me. For the most part, the food tasted like ours, but was different product names and colors. The purple ketchup was the strangest. We talked a little bit more, then I expressed the notion that I should be going because it was getting late. The time of day was identical to ours, as in all worlds. We went back in the room with the machines in it. I grabbed my dog and shook Jonas's hand for taking care of me after I was knocked out, and thanked him again and stepped through the portal which felt like getting wet but staying dry the entire time. Really weird. When I put my dog on the ground, she shook herself like she thought she was wet. Back in our world, I could see my car on the road still, and there was a straight line burn mark on the ground from where the portal had shown up. It was dark outside, and the only reason I noticed the burn was because it was still smoking from the heat. I walked back to my car, didn't run this time, and drove home. The worst part was I couldn't even listen to the tape on the way home because I didn't have a tape player in my car. I actually wasn't even able to listen to it at home either for the same reason. I had to go to Walmart and buy a tape player just to listen to it. Unfortunately, I don't have any information about the tape other than what is written on the card sleeve. The track names were written as well as the album title, Everyday Chemistry. Everything else about it is as mysterious to you as it is to me. It also wasn't like I could ask the guy anything about it, especially after taking it from him. I'll post some more of my experiences in coming days, but I have to go to work now, and this post is already long enough. If anyone has any questions about the incident, they can contact me at BeatlesNeverBrokeUp@yahoo.com. I'll try to answer everyone's questions as best as possible. Lastly, if there is anyone out there that has experienced anything like this, then please contact me. Some things the guy said to me almost make me wonder if this isn't the first time dimensional travelers have been here. James Richards. Okay, that I can honestly say is truly weird. And like I said at the beginning of this, I wouldn't have believed it if it wouldn't be for the tape. So in that, I can fully understand his, even though the guy was very forceful in, you're not supposed to take any souvenirs or anything, nothing back, that he felt he needed to have some kind of evidence. I agree, because without that, without the tape, this would be just another crazy story that is online that I would doubt more than I would believe. But one thing I will have in the description bar below this video is a link to the website where you will see links to playing some of the songs. And yes, I am going to play for you one of the songs. Largely because since this is from a parallel Earth, there is definitely no record producer that could claim a copyright on it.
And now back to your local station.
And that was Soldier Boy by the Beatles from A Parallel Earth. It is truly a remarkable story. And it is something, there are others similar to this type of claim. But like I said, they don't have evidence of that other Earth to validate what they're saying. And yes, I will have a link to this website where you can listen to all of the tracks or even download the entire album on zip. It is something that I would really love to hear what you think of this. I wanted to include one of the songs partially as evidence for the story that I read because I know how unbelievable that sounds. And like me, I'm sure a lot of you also look for what evidence is there to support a claim. That it's not just about blindly believing a claim someone makes, but wanting to see evidence to support the claim. And this music that was never released, and it was even a little bit weird for me listening to that because I thought I could hear John Lennon in that, and it really, given the fact that he died so long ago, that is a bit creepy. But it's interesting to consider that there are an infinite number of Earths. It raises, because I had heard the idea that that every choice you make creates a parallel world. And I think I'd mentioned in other videos how many parallel worlds that would make. And what this seems to indicate is that, yes, as crazy as it sounds, that there are that many parallel worlds, which really raises the question of a multiverse and just how vast a multiverse could be. And even like with the aspect of the Beatles still all being alive and touring in another Earth, it makes me wonder how many other Earths am I in and how many other Earths am I not even alive anymore. It raises all kinds of questions. And even more for the religious, it raises questions of what if there is another Earth where I'm a serial killer? Or another Earth where who knows what, where I'm in jail? It really, I guess the possibilities of it are infinite because of the infinite number of Earths. But it really, and if that is the case, what would the idea of all of us having a soul, would that also correlate to the other Earths? And if so, how would all of that jive in an afterlife if you have an infinite number of yous out there? Which one is you? Couldn't it be argued all of them are? And it raises so many. The rabbit hole for this can go so deep as to completely frost everything we think is real. And I would really love to know what your thoughts are on this. And does it freak you out at all to think that there are other yous out there in another dimension, a parallel Earth, living a life maybe very similar to yours, maybe very different? But I'm really curious what your thoughts are on this. Feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Oh, and I did send this guy an email saying I would like to interview him. If he gets back to me, I will definitely have that interview and post it on YouTube, because I would love to have a conversation with him. But feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Later, people.